Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bara Aldasouqi here, Enrollment Advisor at Purify Your Gaze, with you for episode number 5 of our show, Kickstart Your Recovery. And today we're talking about, our tip for today is take care of yourself. We're going to talk about how self-care is one of the most empowering ways to uplift yourself from indulgence and craft a life that's good for you and good for others, inshallah ta'ala. So I'd like to start us off today by sharing with you a recent experience that I had while attending one of our group calls with several members of the support community that we have at Purify Your Gaze. So one member who's on this call, and we'll call him Omar for the sake of this discussion, he was sharing how he had recently went to a spiritual retreat, kind of like an Islamic studies seminar of sorts over the weekend. And what he found is that although the experience he was having there was very spiritually uplifting, was very positive, the very same night, despite that, the very same night that he came home, or very soon after that, he found himself turning back to his old habits and relapsing once again. Now, this phenomenon is something that I've noticed not just from the experience of Omar, but also from several other members whom I've interacted with in the Purify Your Gaze community. It's not uncommon that the person who struggles with turning to unwanted sexual behaviors is the very same person who is actively engaged in Islamic activities, whether it's attending weekend seminars on Islamic studies, or even in the case of one member I spoke with, participating in a dawah group and going out with this dawah program for a period of 40 days, right? And what I found is that it's not a coincidence that these individuals are struggling with turning to pornography, are also involved in these activities. And there's actually a very interesting link between the two. And I'd like to explore that with you, inshallah, and take some takeaways, some lessons that we can learn from this experience that's, some of our members have shared, and some I've heard from myself. The common experience is that sincere Muslims, they're simply trying to live a proper, upright life. They get so fed up with their unwanted behaviors, and in this frustration, the idea of changing their environment completely, right, and spending some time in a spiritually uplifting environment with no opportunity to act out sexually anymore becomes very appealing, right? And not only is it very appealing, but sometimes it seems like, that's just what I need, right? Just what I need. I need to get out of this environment. I need to put all the media behind me. I need to get spiritually recharged, right? So I can understand that. I can relate to that. And they do. They leave home. They spend a weekend or even a month away from home, and the experience is very often uplifting, very often very fun, and their problems are literally behind them, right? Their problems are behind them, and there's no thought whatsoever that they have during this experience of acting out sexually. But the interesting part, right, and the part that we want to explore a little bit during this episode where we're talking about self-care and being proactive about self-care, is what happens the moment that they come home, right? For many people, that very moment, that very night, or very soon after is when sometimes they'll relapse and turn back to their old behaviors to an even more severe extent than they had prior to that, right? And at that time, they feel even worse about their problems. How could I go to this, spiritual retreat and, do all this learning, and yet I fall back into my sin the very same night, right? So they feel even worse about the situation. And this phenomenon happens very revealing. Let's start taking away some lessons that we can learn from this experience. The first lesson that is revealed by this phenomenon is that if you're someone who turns to sexual behaviors compulsively, then you can say with confidence that it's not really about the sexual needs. It's not really about the sexual needs. We all have sexual needs, But when you start turning to sex compulsively, it becomes a habit that you turn to regularly, time and time again, and you feel like it's out of control, and it's used often to cope with stress, then it means that you're using it to fill needs that have nothing to do with sexuality at all, right? Now in the story of Amr, let's see how we can take this away from the story of Amr that I just shared. We see that when he would go to these weekend Islamic seminars, he would not even think about acting out. Right? It's not even on his mind, right? Why is that? Why is that? It's because he was in a place where his emotional needs were being met in a positive way. There was simply no need to fantasize about turning to sexually acting out. He was learning things that would uplift him spiritually. He would always be surrounded by friends, and he would be having lots of fun, right? He would not be overwhelmed by the regular things that normally might stress him out, whether it's school or work or problems in the family, whatever it may be. In many ways, this experience of going to this weekend seminar was like a utopia. It was like a utopia that he could escape to from the troubles of his daily life and the darkness of his addiction as well. Now think about the times when he's back in his normal life routine, right? Coming back from the seminar, back to his day-to-day routine. There's not that consistent spiritual nourishment, right? If you're lucky, in your day-to-day life, you might see friends once or two times a week, right? If you're lucky, there's work stress, there's school stress, there's family problems, right? Now you can see how turning to sex then comes in as a drug of choice, right? To escape from these problems in life. Right? Now Omar, who went to this Islamic studies seminar, and when he went there, he had no urge to act out, but yet the very same night he found himself turning. The very same night he came back, he found himself turning to his old habits. He has genuine, even beautiful needs as a human being, right? And oftentimes he sought to meet those needs in healthy ways, such as going to that seminar. The only problem is that more often than not, he was turning to destructive, unhealthy ways to meet those needs. Right? Now let me share with you a very powerful framework to think about your emotional needs as a human being. Now this is a framework that's very popular in personal development and psychology, and my understanding is that it was developed by somebody who's very popular in personal development named Tony Robbins. Now, I want to share this framework with you because I believe that it really has the potential to leave you feeling more fulfilled and help you to make choices that are better for you and better for those around you as well. Now, what he says is that the reason people do anything in life, anything that they do, is to meet these 6 needs that every human being has. And what are these 6 needs? I'm going to share them with you right here, inshallah. And again, just welcoming anybody who's joining us for episode number 5, Kickstart Your Recovery. If you're joining in a little bit late, you can always catch the notes in the replay at purifyyourgaze.com/kickstart, so don't worry about that. I'm sharing with you the 6 emotional human needs right here in this framework, inshallah. The need number 1 is certainty. You need to feel safe. There needs to be some level of predictability in your life. Right? And just kind of think about these and how these play out in your own life as I'm describing them. Need number 2 is variety. So even though that you need to have some level of predictability and certainty in your life, things get too boring if there wasn't variety, some level of excitement, some level of spice in your life as well. So that's the second emotional need that everybody has. Everybody needs to have these 6 needs met. Number 3 is significance. You have to feel like you matter. You have to feel like you have a place in this world. Need number 4, love and connection. This doesn't need much explanation. This is one of the most basic ones that we find ourselves turning to time and time again in our lives. Need number 5 is growth. Growth. The idea here is that you can't really stay stagnant in life. The idea is that you have to be growing, because if you're not growing, then you're only going the other direction. You're only dying. Okay. Need number 6 is contribution. Right? You can feel good, right, when you're meeting your own needs, But in order to be truly fulfilled, you have to feel like you're part of something bigger. You're part of something bigger, and you're contributing to something bigger than yourself. Now, personally, I am blown away personally by the sheer simplicity of this framework, yet its power to help you understand the behaviors that you engage in and the things that you find yourself turning to time and time again. If you take any activity that you do in your life, whether it's something that's healthy for you or something that's unhealthy for you, can't you see that any activity that you do, it's used as a vehicle to meet one or several of these 6 basic needs? Right? Let's take the example back to the story of Omar. Can't you see that going to these weekend Islamic seminars would do an amazing job at meeting some of these needs? Right? For example, variety. He's leaving home, he's hanging out with his classmates, he's trying out new food, just a very different experience from his day-to-day routine. How about the need for love and connection? Of course. Right? Amazing sense of community there when he is in the class, taking the class with so many other classmates and students. Right? How about the need for growth? He's there and he's gaining spiritual growth. He's learning new things and he's growing spiritually. Right? Now, in a way, can't you see that Omar going to this Islamic studies seminar on the weekend is in a way, it's kind of an addiction of sorts, right? Something that he can turn to in order to have his needs met in a very powerful way. Now, of course, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that that's the case, but we can kind of understand it in that sense. All right. Now, going back to the story, we're going to look at takeaway number 2. So takeaway number 1 was that it's not about the sexual needs after all. If you're turning to unwanted sexual behaviors compulsively, right, you can be pretty confident that there's something going on far beyond, the basic sexual needs, and that these emotional needs are playing a role as well, are not being met in a healthy way. Now, let's go back to the story so we can look at takeaway number 2. The most surprising part, like I shared before, is that many individuals find themselves turning back to their old habits as soon as they get back home. As soon as they get back home, sometimes they're even doing great before going out and engaging in this weekend seminar or whatever it may be. Sometimes they're doing great, but after they get back home, they seem to fall back even harder than before. How can we understand that? Now, this is my personal take on why this happens. Right? Now, when Omar or anyone else goes to these spiritually uplifting events, if you just kind of think about it, all of his needs are kind of being handed to him on a silver platter. Wouldn't you agree? Right? It's all there ready for him to enjoy. The variety, the connection, the growth. He doesn't really have to try. He doesn't really have to be proactive in order to kind of have a good time and feel good and feel fulfilled while he's at this event, right? Now, it just kind of has to go with the flow and he'll feel good and fulfilled. Now, I think it's great that an activity can make it so easy to feel fulfilled, and he can turn to that. He can kind of rely on that as a source of fulfillment for him. But here is the problem. The problem is that prior to going to this weekend seminar, my guess is that Omar, whose story we're kind of focusing this episode on, taking some takeaways from it, he had probably had his guard up. Right? Probably had his guard up. He knew he had to be on the watch so that he doesn't fall back into his old habits. And so he was constantly monitoring his emotional well-being, right? He was being proactive about making sure that his needs are met in healthy ways. Otherwise, he knew that he would fall back into his old habits. Now, what happens when you find your needs being handed to you, right? Just kind of very, without the need for you to be proactive about it. Somebody is just coming to you and taking care of all of your needs, right? The guard comes down, you just kind of sit back, relax, feels great, feels fulfilled, right? Because you don't have to put in that effort. If I can have my needs met, everything met for me, and I don't need to put in effort, that's great. Why would I try then? Of course, right? And that's what happens. That's what happens. And so if my personal take on why somebody finds themselves falling back to their old behaviors, they go to this event and it's so fulfilling, so satisfying, they kind of indulge in it. And when they get back home, the guard is down. The guard is down, right? They've let go of proactively monitoring themselves and taking care of their needs. And so when they get back home, the guard is down, and so they fall when they least expected it to happen. Now, what this teaches us is that it's important to be proactive about meeting our needs in healthy ways, right? Many people in life are looking around, looking at the people around them, looking at the things around them. They're looking around, kind of waiting for a hero to come and save them and uplift them. And I can understand that, and I can relate to that. They hope that things and people around them are going to make them feel loved, make them feel certainty, making them feel significance, make them feel variety, right? I can understand that, and I can relate to that. But the problem is that that won't always be done for you. It won't always be done for you, right? And honestly, I can't blame you if you're somebody who find yourself kind of escaping to certain activities that make you feel very fulfilled. And let's say they're healthy activities like going to a weekend seminar. I can't blame you for doing that, right? Who am I to say that it's a bad idea for you to go to the seminar, right? And feel very fulfilled as a result. But again, it's important to be intentional and proactive about meeting your needs in healthy ways and not just waiting and hoping that other people and other things are going to satisfy your needs. Now, let's move on to the next takeaway that we take from this story, takeaway number 3. So hopefully by now, you can see that it's important to be proactive about meeting your needs in healthy ways. And while it's great to have avenues to meet your needs, such as going to a weekend class, it won't be enough to overcome your addiction to unhealthy habits. And the reason for that is that you need to meet your needs in a way that is consistent and long-term. That gives you consistent and long-term fulfillment, right? Consistent and long-term. So if you're somebody who likes to kind of go on that escape and enjoy, this weekend activity or the spiritual retreat or whatever it may be, right? The only question is, when you get back home, do you have a way, a system to continuously find that fulfillment? Or was that an escape because you're not able to find that in your day-to-day life? In your day-to-day life. And that's really the key here, and that's really what many people lack in their lives. So finally, I'm ready to introduce the concept of self-care, which is what this whole episode is about, and why it's so important for somebody who's seeking to recover from unwanted sexual behaviors. So what is self-care all about? In lieu of everything we've talked about, in lieu of the emotional needs, in lieu of the need to meet them consistently and be proactive about it, what is self-care all about? The way that I would define it is this. It's to do the things that feel good, that help you to feel good, but to do them from a place of care rather than a place of indulgence. Right? To do the things that help you feel good and to do them with the intention of care rather than doing them from a place of indulgence. You see, everyone does things to help them feel good, right? Everybody does it, right? Lots of people spend hours watching TV and Netflix, right? Lots of people turn to junk food and, just open up that bag of chocolate or whatever, and myself included, right? That's something I fall into. I see that bag of chocolate and I'm not feeling good. I don't want to do it, but I'm just mindless. I go in like the Cookie Monster and I just open this piece of chocolate and I eat it. And the truth is that when I do that, it's not because I care about myself, right? I'm not doing that from a place of care. I'm doing that from a place of kind of indulgence, right? I'm doing it from a place of indulgence. Now, how many people do things that help them feel good because they actually care for themselves? How many people actually believe the needs that I have are legitimate and I deserve to have them met, and I care enough about myself to find ways to meet them in healthy ways. Right? Here's the thing. When your emotional needs are not being met, you will meet them. You will find a way to meet them. Right? The only question is, the only difference that happens if you're conscious and proactive about it, then you can do things that not only feel good, but they are good for you, and they're good for others, and they're good in the long term. That's if you're conscious and proactive about it. However, if you're not proactive about it, then you'll always choose the thing that's easiest. Right? You're feeling bad, you got unmet emotional needs, right? If you're not proactive about meeting those needs, you're going to choose the thing that's easiest, right? And the thing that requires the least effort and has the most immediate pleasure. And oftentimes you'll ignore the long-term consequences and how it can affect others as well. So can you see now why choosing to meet your needs in healthy ways is the road less traveled? It's because it takes a conscious choice and effort and commitment to do so. Very few people think about, for example, going out and doing some exercise, going for a run, going for a jog when they feel bad. Very few people think about that. It's the last thing that you'd want to do. Most people would rather lie in bed or watch a movie or turn to their unwanted habits, right? Or eat ice cream or something like that. But a few fortunate people, right, at some point in their lives, they decided, I want to have my needs met in healthy ways, right? I deserve that. And they made a commitment to practice self-care in their lives. And that commitment enabled them that when they were feeling bad and the last thing they wanted to do was go and do some exercise, it enabled them to actually go ahead and do that, even though they didn't really feel like it. And when they did that enough times, it actually became second nature. Their brain became rewired because they found a more pleasurable and healthy addiction, right? So to speak. The thought of turning to the old habits became less and less appealing as they experienced time and time again the long-term pleasures associated with choosing a more healthy choice. So, how do we do this? How do we develop habits of self-care? Now, let me start by saying, hopefully by now you can see how focusing on self-care is one of the most empowering ways to overcome destructive behaviors and start building your life. Start building your life by finding things that not only feel good, but they're good for you and good for the people around you and good for you in the long term as well. So how do you do this? What habits should you focus on? The possibilities are endless. So where do you start? Well, this is where, I have to break it to you. I can't give you, a list of things that, you need to do in order to be able to say that you're practicing self-care in your life, because it's really all up to you. And it's really all up to what your particular needs are and what kind of lifestyle that you want to make and the things that you enjoy doing and the things that let you feel fulfilled. It's all up to you, but there is a guideline. There is a guideline that can help you determine how to practice self-care in your own life. And the guideline is that the intention is key. Your intention is key. Let me explain that. People who turn to pornography, for example, they don't turn to it because they care about themselves, right? That's not the intentionality behind turning to this behavior, right? But they're turning to it in order to satisfy some need that they have, right? But at the end of the day, it's not an act of care, it's an act of self-neglect, right? It's an act of self-neglect. The reason individuals turn to pornography is because there's some pain in their life, and rather than listening to it, rather than addressing it, rather than hearing it out, rather than listening to their heart, rather than caring for themselves, they choose to indulge. They choose to numb it out, and they choose to make the pain go away temporarily, but in the long term it only increases. right? And I don't want to sound harsh by describing it in this way, but I believe that that's really what the reality is. So if you want to turn things around, start by actually caring for yourself. Start by actually caring for yourself and bring that intention to the things that you do. So for example, if you want to add more recitation of Quran into your daily routine, you want to do that, part of your self-care, then do it because you care about yourself, not from a place of shame because you feel like you have to do that, otherwise you're not a good person. Right? Do it because you care about yourself. If you want to exercise more, you want to pick up your exercise, do it because you care about yourself. You care to see yourself grow in the long term, not because you feel inadequate or not because you feel that you're unworthy if you don't do it, because you're either overweight or underweight, or you're not man enough if you don't do it, right? Things like that. Do it from a place of care. If you want to spend more time with friends, do it because you care about yourself, not because you hope that they will come and fill your needs. And hopefully they will. Hopefully they will be there and care about you and provide you with love and connection, right? But do it from a place of care, not from a place where you hope that someone else is going to take care of you when you're not able to take care of your own self. So these are just some examples, but just keep in mind that by practicing self-care, you're choosing to prefer long-term fulfillment, right? Deeper fulfillment over the easy and delicious alternatives that are also available to you, right? So it won't always be easy. You won't always want to do it, but you do because you care about yourself and you care to see yourself grow into the beautiful human being that you know that you can be. So hopefully by now it's clear that self-care is not a matter of being selfish or narcissistic. It's just about taking responsibility to meet your needs in healthy ways rather than expecting other people and other things to come to your rescue and meet all of your needs for you. But some people may still feel like they'd rather focus I don't want to focus all this energy on this idea of self-care. I'd rather be focusing my energy on serving other people. This sounds selfish or something like that. But here's the thing. You can only function fully as a human being when your basic needs are met. Right? Now, think about that. Think about this. If you're without food for days, right, it would be silly, don't you think, to think about, contributing by, you want to go do some volunteering or you want to do some teaching, you want to contribute to someone else's life when you have such a basic need that needs to be met. You're starving. Right? You're starving. Right? You have to meet that need first, then you can start thinking about how you can contribute to the people around you, right? Now, similarly, if your emotional needs are not adequately met, then your bucket is empty. You really don't have much to give, right? I've heard it said several times before that you cannot give what you don't have. So your heart must be full of love if you hope to give love to those around you, right? And the best way to fill it with love is to consciously, proactively choose to engage in the behaviors and the activities that actually fill your heart with love. Another objection that some may have is, Bara, this all sounds great and self-care and, you're right, I need that in my life in order to, let go of the habits that are bad for me. But listen, this isn't for me because, Bara, I'm a medical student. Right? I just, my nose is in the books, this is the lifestyle that I have, or not necessarily a medical student, but I'm busy all the time, I'm so active, and I don't have time for this, and I prefer to be busy after all. I don't want to have time for myself because that's when I fall into trouble. And this is what I want to say. First of all, I will say that self-care takes time and dedication, right? And I'm personally fascinated at times in my own kind of practice of self-care, that this stuff really takes time. It really takes time. You can't just do some quick 5-minute routine and feel fulfilled the rest of the day, right? That emotional part of me, it continues to demand my attention, oftentimes for much longer than I would want it to. So the fear that people have is you can't really be productive, you can't achieve the things you want to achieve in life if you spend so much time for self-care. But here's how I see it. You can choose to kind of put self-care on the side, kind of ignore it a little bit, and instead derive your sense of worth and fulfillment and significance from your studies or from your work or from your achievements. And if you choose to do that and it works for you, I can't really blame you for that. But the question is, has that worked for you? Has that worked for you? Have you found consistent and long-term fulfillment in the way that you lead your life? Right? Or are you always saying, you know what, I can feel I feel pretty bad right now, but I can feel happy once this phase of my life is over, once things are settled down, once I have X, Y, and Z achievements, then I can feel happy and fulfilled. Because the reality that I believe is that later on really will never come until you start to be proactive about meeting your needs and making sure that you feel fulfilled on a consistent basis. And here's the thing, you don't need to choose between self-care and between focusing on self-care and between productivity and achievement and success, because at the end of the day, starting with self-care will fill up your physical and emotional and mental and spiritual reserves so that you can engage in the other pursuits that you have and you can invest in them from a place where you're putting in quality time, right? You're putting your true self into these things, so the results will, you can only expect that they'll be so much better. Be so much better, right? I'm convinced from my personal study of personal development that true achievement, it doesn't come when you skip steps, right? It doesn't come when you skip steps. So I believe that you can't really try to make a meaningful contribution to the world before you've taken care of your own self, your own basic needs. You might make it by, you might, kind of achieve some achievement, but you won't really thrive. That's my personal take on the matter. And the reason is that you'll always need your achievements to feel good about yourself. So rather than, actually contributing to society from a place of love and care, you'll find that you're seeking recognition from a place of kind of neediness, right? Kind of neediness. So I wanted to share that perspective. I personally believe that it's always great to start with step one. Right? It's always great to start with step one. And the first person that you and I are responsible for taking care of is our own self. Right? That's the first person that we're responsible for. So we need to be proactive about doing so. I hope you got some ideas about how one of the most important keys to long-term freedom from lustful habits is to consciously, proactively, and consistently take care of yourself. And I do look forward, inshallah ta'ala, to seeing you for our next episode, episode number 6, where we're going to talk about embracing honesty in your life. Having a secret habit clearly poses a threat to living an honest life, and maybe you can relate to that. Yet, understandably, many people feel like there's no way that they can be entirely honest in their life. There's no way that they can share their secret struggle with their loved one, for example. But what I'm going to do with you next episode, inshallah, is I'm going to share with you a very amazing story about what happened when one particular member of Purify Your Gaze, his marriage was on the line, and he decided that he was going to be completely 100%, nothing held back, ruthlessly honest with his spouse about his struggle. And we'll see what happened in his life when he chose to do so. Thank you for being with me for episode number 5. You can always catch the notes, episodes, previous episodes, and the replay at purifyyourgaze.com/kickstart. Again, my hope with this is it's just a positive message that's available to people who want to get some tips that will help them make leaps toward breaking free. So if you've got somebody in mind that you think would benefit from this, please do share it with them. I do hope to see you next time, inshallah. Like our Facebook page so you always get the updates. And I hope to see you next time, inshallah ta'ala, for episode number 6. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.